Hey guys, tonight we're diving into something gentle, something ancient, something wrapped in faith and mystery. This is not your typical bedtime story with dragons and brave knights. Though fair warning, there will be dreams, ladders to the sky, and more angels than your grandma's holiday decor. No, tonight we're talking about sleep. Holy sleep. Sacred sleep. The kind of sleep even saints surrendered to when the world got too loud. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is there. Midnight in Michigan, 3 a.m. in Manila. You insomniacs are in good company. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step out into a garden. But this isn't your neighbor's backyard or a Pinterest-perfect botanical setup. This is Eden, still wet with creation. The grass has never been stepped on, the breeze is new, and you're barefoot. The air is thick with peace, and somewhere among the fig trees and lion-friendly meadows Adam yawns. You know, Adam's first full day on Earth was basically a nap. Think about it. God made him on the sixth day, gave him a quick orientation, named some animals, say hi to the giraffes, and then poof, time to sleep. Not out of laziness, but as an act of trust. The very first human being was lulled into unconsciousness by God himself. And while Adam slept, something miraculous happened. You probably remember the story. God took a rib from Adam's side and fashioned Eve. But here's a detail that rarely makes it into Sunday school crafts. Adam didn't watch God make her. He didn't design her or suggest specs like, maybe give her better conversational skills than the lion. Nope. He trusted. He slept. And in that sacred stillness, something good was born. That's your first lesson tonight. Sometimes, the most meaningful transformations happen when you're not even awake to witness them. In ancient Hebrew texts, sleep wasn't seen as weakness. It was surrender. It was an act of worship, a way of saying, I'm not in control and that's okay. And frankly, that's still pretty radical. Because let's be honest, how many times have you laid in bed, checking your phone, calculating how many hours you could sleep if you fell asleep right now? Sleep becomes a battleground. But here, in Eden, it was a gift. Fast forward a few chapters. Spoiler alert, humans messed up the paradise thing, and sleep started to look a little different. Now it came with worry, sweat, maybe a rock for a pillow. But still, even in exile, sleep stayed sacred. Imagine yourself under a desert sky, stars as thick as spilled salt. No traffic, no buzzing phone, just silence. Somewhere nearby, Abraham dozes. And while he's fast asleep, God shows him visions of the future. Not just his own family, but an entire nation. Kings, prophets, struggles, triumphs. All revealed while he's horizontal and snoring. That's another truth the ancients understood. Dreams weren't just mental leftovers. They were messages, sacred emails from heaven. And in the days before coffee or alarm clocks, people paid attention. But here's the funny part. Most of those divine dreams, they weren't exactly bedtime stories. No one's dreaming about a beach vacation. Joseph, yeah, the Technicolor coat guy, got warnings and symbols so bizarre it would make modern dream analysts cry. 7 skinny cows eating 7 fat cows? Sure, totally relaxing. Still, sleep remained the channel. God didn't hold a press conference or post an Instagram story. He whispered in dreams. And you, standing there in ancient sandals, realized something. You've been thinking of sleep as the thing that ends your day. But in Genesis, the Hebrew, day actually begins at sundown, and there was evening, and there was morning. That means your day starts in darkness, in sleep, in rest. How's that for a twist? In other words, you begin not by doing, but by ceasing. Not by striving, but by surrendering. That changes everything. While the world tells you to rise and grind, the sacred rhythm says, lie down and trust. Even the Psalms, the ancient playlists of praise and pain, speak of this quiet trust. In peace I will lie down and sleep, for you alone, Lord, Make me dwell in safety. That's Psalm 4:8 in case you want a needle pointed on a pillow later. But it's more than pretty poetry. It's a declaration of defiance in the face of anxiety. Because the truth is, sleep is vulnerable. You're unconscious, unaware. You don't know what's happening in the world, in your home, or in your soul. And yet you sleep, like a child, trusting that someone else is keeping watch. And here's the curveball. Sometimes in these ancient stories, sleep was more powerful than action. When the Israelites were panicking, Moses told them to stand still and let God fight for them. Stillness as strategy, calm as courage. Of course, not everyone found it easy. The book of Ecclesiastes, ever the moody teenager of Scripture, warns that the sleep of the laborer is sweet, unless you're rich and anxious. Then good luck. Even back then, people were tossing and turning over bills and status and FOMO. They didn't have TikTok, but they had scrolls, goats, and rival tribes. Same stress, different font. Still, the invitation to rest remained, and this is where you come in, lying there now, your eyes heavy, your breath slowing. You may not be in Eden, you may not have angels on your voicemail or dreams with talking cows, but you do have this. A body wired for rest, and a sacred tradition that says sleep isn't weakness, it's worship. So tonight, don't fight it. Don't overthink it. Just lie back, breathe, and let go. The same Creator who watched over Adam, who whispered to Abraham, who calmed the anxious kings and prophets, he's still here, still watching, still holding the world while you close your eyes. And you're safe. You really are. Now you might still be wondering what happens when even kings can't sleep, or when dreams go wrong. But don't worry, we'll get to that. There are many nights ahead. For now, you just feel the cool air across your skin. You hear the soft hum of the night. You smile at the idea of Adam, the first napper in history. And you drift. You're still lying there right where the night left you, cocooned in the hush of sleep and shadows. But now something shifts. You feel it, don't you? A rustling, a pulse under the silence. This isn't Eden anymore. The garden is long gone. What surrounds you now are flickering torches, the worn stones of an ancient temple, and someone small, someone young, sleeping on the ground. You look closer. It's a child. Not quite a boy, not yet a man. His name is Samuel. You watch as his chest rises and falls gently. He's curled up by the Ark of the Covenant. Yes, the Ark. The golden box with cherub wings, the one that practically radiates holiness. And yet here he is, dozing next to it like it's just another night at summer camp. But then, something odd happens. A voice, Samuel. His eyes flutter, then open wide. He bolts up and runs to the old priest, Eli. Here I am, he says, still groggy. You called me? Eli grunts, annoyed, rubbing sleep from his eyes. I didn't call you. Go back to bed. And so he does, only to be woken again, and again. 3 times the voice calls, and 3 times Samuel misunderstands. Because that's how it works sometimes. When the divine speaks, it doesn't always sound like thunder. Sometimes it sounds like your roommate mumbling in their sleep, or like your own thoughts echoing in your head. Finally, Eli, half awake, half wise, realizes what's happening. It's the Lord, he tells Samuel. Next time say, Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening. And Samuel does, and with that whispered reply, the floodgates open. God speaks. Not in a dream. Not through lightning or laws carved in stone. But in a night so quiet you can hear the scratching of rats behind the altar. It's not just a bedtime story. It's a pattern. You start to see it everywhere now. Prophets. Sleeping. Dreams. Crackling like thunder in their heads. You move from the temple's hush to a vast, open desert. The air is hot even at night, and a man sits alone by a stream. His name is Elijah, and he's just about done with everything. Ministry, miracles, enemies, it's all too much. He's burnt out before burnout had a name. So he collapses under a broom tree and tells God he wants to die. Dramatic? Maybe. But haven't you had moments like that too? Here's the twist. God doesn't scold him, doesn't hand him a to-do list. Instead, he sends an angel. With snacks. Yes, really. Bread baking on stones and a jar of water. Eat, the angel says. Then sleep. And Elijah does. Twice. Because sometimes the holiest thing you can do isn't fasting, or fighting, or praying all night. It's taking a nap and eating something warm. Divine wisdom tastes like carbs, apparently. But don't get too comfortable. Not all dreams in Scripture come with snacks and soothing voices. Now you're in Babylon, walking beside a man with a beard like tangled vines and eyes that never quite blink all the way. His name is Daniel, and he's what scholars would call dream-prone. The man collects visions like your grandma collects teacups, and his dreams? Let's just say Pixar wouldn't touch them. Beasts with 10 horns, statues made of mixed metals, kingdoms rising and falling. Sometimes even Daniel has no idea what he's dreaming about. You watch him wake up, sweating through linen, mumbling about goats and kings and something about the end of days. You might think, well, at least he got answers. Not really. Even Daniel, dream interpreter extraordinaire, was sometimes left puzzled. I, Daniel, was deeply troubled by my thoughts, and my face turned pale, he once wrote. But I kept the matter to myself. Because you see, divine dreams don't always come with clear explanations. And maybe they're not meant to. Maybe mystery is part of the sleep package. And speaking of mystery, here's a weird one. Did you know that Ezekiel, the prophet famous for seeing wheels within, wheels and bones rising from deserts, was told to lie on his side for 390 days? Yeah, not technically sleep, but close enough. The point? God often worked through rest, stillness, or what looked like it from the outside, which brings you back to Samuel. Remember him? That wide-eyed boy became one of the greatest prophets Israel ever knew, but he started asleep. That first word from God didn't come at high noon or on a mountaintop. It came in the still, slow breath between dreams. It's a gentle reminder for you, too. Sometimes when the world's loud, when your head is full of static, when your spirit feels more like a crumpled napkin than a flame, that's when you need to listen. Not to the chaos, but to the quiet, to the call in the dark, to the invitation to just lie down, breathe, and be. Because here's the thing. Sleep isn't just about closing your eyes. It's about opening your soul. Even now, as you rest, your mind might be flickering with thoughts, deadlines, texts you didn't reply to, some awkward moment from 8th grade that insists on replaying like a bad sitcom rerun. But beneath that noise, there's stillness, a place where you are seen, known, called by name. And when you wake, maybe you won't have visions of beasts and angels. Maybe you won't hear a voice call out from the shadows. But maybe, just maybe, you'll remember something softer, a sense of being held, a knowing that sleep isn't failure, it's sacred, that when prophets napped, the world shifted, quietly. Oh, and remember how Samuel heard the call 3 times before he figured it out? Don't be discouraged if your peace doesn't come on the first try. Some of us take a few rounds. Some of us need to press snooze once or twice. So tonight, let the prophets keep watch. Let Daniel battle beasts in his dreams. Let Elijah bake his bread. You've done enough for today. Curl up, breathe out. And if a voice calls your name, don't panic. Just say softly, "Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening." Then roll over and sleep like the sacred creature you are. Somewhere in the distant haze of your half-dreaming mind, the sand shifts again beneath your feet. You've barely left the temple, the stillness of Samuel's breath, the echo of Daniel's beasts, and yet already you're being pulled forward, farther, down the dusty corridors of faith and fatigue. This time your sandals crunch against dry stone steps. There's a wall before you, a massive one. Jerusalem, the holy city under siege, and there, not on a battlefield, but curled up in a corner of a rooftop, is King David. Yes, that David. Goliath-slaying, harp-playing, psalm-singing David. He's supposed to be out with his army, but he stayed behind. Perhaps he needed rest, or perhaps he just needed silence. Even warrior poets get tired. Even kings avoid their calendars sometimes. But tonight, well, tonight he can't sleep. He walks the rooftop restless. That terrible kind of exhaustion. The one that simmers under your skin and keeps your eyes wide open even though your body is screaming for rest. You know the kind. The one where you stare at the ceiling fan for hours, wondering if you forgot to pay your taxes or left the oven on. And just like that, in his sleepless haze, David sees her, Bathsheba. You know the rest. It's a story that burns like a secret. Desire, deception, death. All from a sleepless king who didn't know how to be still. It makes you wonder how much trouble has been born from tired people refusing to rest. You turn away from David's rooftop. It's too heavy for now. So you follow the glow of lanterns and end up in a strange place, somewhere between home and exile. You're in a simple bedroom, the kind that creaks when you walk, the kind with olive oil lamps on the shelf and blankets woven by hand. A woman lies there, her hair spread like ink over her pillow. She's dreaming. Her name is Mary. Not just any Mary. The Mary. And here's something you probably didn't learn in Sunday school. Before Gabriel ever knocked politely on the veil between heaven and earth, before she said yes to the unthinkable, before her belly became the cradle of eternity, she was sleeping. No choir, no announcement, just sleep. And then, light. Not the kind you can turn on with a switch. A thick golden radiance that slips through the air like honey. A voice that doesn't echo but vibrates in your bones. Do not be afraid. Which, let's be honest, is a hilarious thing to say to a teenage girl who just woke up and found an angel hovering next to her nightstand. But she doesn't scream. She listens. And then, she says yes. And that yes changes the world. So you lie there too, wondering. What if the most important decisions of your life are whispered to you when you're at your softest? When your brain is foggy and your heart is finally quiet? What if peace sneaks in through dreams, not thunder? You shift again as sleep drags you deeper. A new night now. Same sky, same stars. But the scene is pastoral. You hear sheep. Smell smoke. Someone snoring. You're among shepherds. Yes, those shepherds. The ones from every Christmas card, with robes and curly beards and sheep that never seem to poop. They're not impressive people, not prophets, not priests, just night laborers, guarding animals in the cold. You imagine their lives are mostly boredom, body odor, and dodging wolf attacks. But tonight, the heavens have other plans. Suddenly the sky rips open like fabric and angels pour out in song. A light so bright it makes your brain ache. Glory to God, they shout, and peace on earth. But here's the best part. The shepherds were asleep. They had no idea what was coming. They hadn't prayed for visions. They weren't fasting or preparing their souls for divine revelation. They were just doing their job, and probably dozing off while leaning on their crooks. God chose to wake up them. Not the priests, not the scholars, not the important people, in their clean beds. The sleep of the lowly was pierced by glory. Now that's a twist, isn't it? The holiest announcements are often delivered to the half asleep, and that makes you wonder, what if you're not lazy for needing rest? What if sleep is actually one of the sacred spaces where the divine gets through, when your filters are off and your pretenses are down? It's a comforting thought, isn't it? You, lying here in bed, could be in the same posture as Mary, or the shepherds, or even Samuel. You start to feel it in your bones now, this pattern. Over and over again, Scripture uses sleep not as a sign of weakness, but as a stage, a threshold, a place where the veil between earth and heaven grows whisper thin. And sure, not all sleep stories end well. Remember Jonah? Oh yes, we're going. There, a man on a ship running from God, pretending his guilt can't find him if he just snoozes hard enough. The sea roars, the boat pitches, the sailors panic. And Jonah? He's snoring in the cargo hold like a guy with noise-canceling guilt. Eventually, they wake him. Eventually, they toss him overboard. But here's the twist. His sleep wasn't cowardice. It was denial. And yet even that got redeemed. The fish swallowed him, sure. But 3 nights later, he emerged, changed. So maybe even the wrong kind of sleep has its purpose. Maybe we all need those underwater dreams sometimes. The ones that chew us up and spit us out on better shores. And maybe, just maybe, your rest tonight isn't wasted, even if you don't dream of angels or fish or flaming messages from heaven. Maybe sleep is simply sacred because it lets go. No more striving. No more proving. Just breathing. Floating. Letting your soul stretch out in stillness, like laundry catching the breeze. You're not running. You're not hiding. You're just resting. And that, dear friend, might be the bravest thing you've done all week, so breathe out. You're doing great. Let the psalmist toss on his rooftop. Let Mary say yes in her dreams. Let Jonah drift in his fishy bed. You're already where you're supposed to be. Soft, safe, still. And if by chance, something divine nudges your shoulder before dawn, well, you'll know what to say. The night folds in tighter now, like the pages of an old book being gently closed. You're not sure when the last scene faded. Was it the shepherds blinking up at a sky full of wings? Or Jonah floating belly up in a whale's stomach with nothing but regret and kelp for company? Either way, you're deeper now. The kind of deep where the blankets have melted into the mattress and your limbs feel like warm dough. You're not dreaming, not quite. You're listening. And in this liminal hush, a new figure stirs into view. He's a man of robes and sandals again. So many sandals in these stories you'd think Nike missed a huge sponsorship opportunity. But this one walks with urgency. Not the grand swagger of kings, not the burdened shuffle of prophets. This man moves like he's late for a train, except he's in the desert. He's Joseph. No, not the rainbow dreamcoat Joseph. You've already met him. This one's the carpenter, the earthly father of Jesus, and he's exhausted. You can tell. By the way he rubs his temples under the moonlight, by the bags under his eyes that could carry an ark's worth of worry. He's got a pregnant fiancée, a town full of gossips, and a message from heaven that sounds suspiciously like a call to ruin his entire reputation. Now imagine trying to sleep after that. But here's the thing. Joseph does sleep. And not just once. In fact, nearly every time Joseph hears from God, it's in a dream. When he's about to call the whole engagement off, dream. When he needs to flee to Egypt to escape a murderous king, dream. When it's time to come back home, dream. This guy's entire divine guidance system is basically celestial REM cycles, which raises an odd little truth. Sometimes God waits until you stop talking to say what matters most. You've been there too, haven't you? That long day where you try to figure it all out. The options, the consequences, the fears that multiply like rabbits in your brain. But then sleep hits, and in that strange velvet space, an answer floats up. Not always logical, not always clean, but strangely, right. That's the Joseph effect, the holy logic of letting go. And it's not about being passive. Joseph still acts. He gets up, he moves cities, he protects, but only after he's rested, only after the divine has spoken to his resting heart. You lie there now wondering, what quiet dreams have you ignored lately? What solutions have whispered past you in the night, only to be drowned out by coffee and notifications in the morning? There's a kind of strength in soft things, you know, like the way light slips through curtains, or how water carves through rock without shouting. You shift slightly in your blanket cocoon, drifting to the next moment, like turning a page with your eyes closed. A courtyard now. Dusty. Crowded. The kind of place where arguments echo too loudly and flies are just part of the atmosphere, and there, sitting under a shady corner, is a woman. Older. Wise. Probably the type who scares you a little at first, like she can see right through your excuses. She's Deborah, judge of Israel, prophetess. No big deal, just one of the only female leaders. In a time when women were barely allowed a voice. And how does she lead? By watching, listening, waiting. Deborah sat beneath a palm tree and settled disputes, which sounds boring until you realize that means she was trusted enough to be still while the world spun around her. And later, she sings. After a major battle, She leads the people not with orders but with poetry. Now that's a flex. Stillness and song. Not swords and noise, it makes you pause. How often do we think we need to be loud to be powerful? But maybe the most radical thing you can do in a noisy world is rest. To hold your peace like a weapon. To take a nap like it's an act of protest. Deborah's story whispers across time. Your wisdom doesn't have to shout. It just has to wait. You don't have to do everything tonight. You don't have to solve the century. You don't have to carry the weight of everyone else's needs like some kind of emotional UPS truck. Just breathe. Even Deborah sat down sometimes. The sound shifts again. Now you hear sandals. Again. And water. A stream maybe. Soft and persistent. And into the frame comes Jesus. Not preaching. Not healing. Not multiplying carbs into infinite bread baskets. He's sleeping. On a boat. In the middle of a storm. Wind howling. Waves thrashing. Disciples screaming like first-year lifeguards. And Jesus? Snoring in the back like it's a hammock ad. You know, the story. The storm grows, the disciples panic, and eventually they shake him awake like kids afraid of thunder. Don't you care that we're dying? Which, frankly, is all of us at some point. And Jesus, stretching, probably rubbing his eyes, says something like, "Why are you afraid, O you of little faith?" Then he tells the storm to calm down. And it does. Here's the hidden magic of that story, though. Jesus trusted the storm enough to sleep through it. He knew they wouldn't drown. The disciples didn't. Their fear had more volume than their memory. But Jesus carried peace like a secret blanket. You think about that now. How often your own worries become hurricanes. How quickly your brain throws all logic out the window the minute your pillow hits just wrong. But tonight you remember the sleeping Savior. Not because he stopped the storm, but because he rested in the middle of it. And that, friend, is your invitation too. Not to fix everything, not to silence all the noise, but to curl up in the back of your own metaphorical boat, trust that you're held, and let the sea rock you gently to sleep. So close your eyes, sailor. The storm is still out there, sure, but you're not steering tonight. Someone else has the wheel, and he's never lost a ship. You're floating now, aren't you? Not quite on a boat. Not exactly in your bed either. Somewhere in between where time folds soft and your breath hums like a quiet lullaby. You remember the storm from earlier. Jesus asleep while chaos danced. Around him like a toddler on too much sugar. And now, in the after-storm silence, a new rhythm begins. A gentler one. Less thunder, more whisper. Less panic, more presence. Because now, we're entering the wilderness. Don't worry. There's no scorpions or sweat involved. This is the story version of the wilderness. All of the meaning, none of the sunburn. You hear dry grass crunching, the hoot of some bird you can't quite place. And ahead of you, a figure wrapped in camel's hair, munching on what looks suspiciously like a bug. Yep, that's John the Baptist, the original wild child. If Jesus was the calm in the storm, John is the storm before the calm. He's intense. Hair like he lost a bet with humidity. Eyes like he's seen things no one else has. And a voice that sounds like thunder learned to speak. But even he rests. Not always physically. John isn't really a nap under a fig tree kind of guy. But spiritually, he's resting in his purpose. He doesn't try to be anyone else. Doesn't scramble to climb ladders or tweak his brand for more clicks. He just is a voice in the wilderness, preparing the way. You think about that for a second. How exhausting it is to always try and become something more, smarter, hotter, funnier, more productive, as if your value depends on how well you perform, like some divine talent show. But John didn't bother with that. He just pointed the way and let it be enough. Even when people tried to give him more credit than he deserved, like calling him the Messiah, John waved it off with a shrug. "I'm not the one," he said. "I'm just the guy yelling from the trees." Imagine the kind of deep spiritual nap you could take if you truly believed you were already enough. No striving, no scrambling, just standing in your own patch of wilderness, knowing that your job isn't to be everything, just to be true. You shift again beneath the covers. The wilderness fades into a stone courtyard now, evening light glowing off the bricks, like warm butter, And in the corner, barely noticeable unless you're really looking, sits Mary of Bethany. Quiet. Still. Watching. Her sister Martha's rushing around, folding napkins, stirring stew, maybe yelling into the first-century version of a group chat about table settings. But Mary sits at Jesus' feet. It's not passive. It's intentional. She chooses to listen instead of perform, to be instead of do, to receive instead of earn. You can practically hear the hiss of Martha's sigh as she glares across the room. But Jesus? He doesn't rebuke Mary. He honors her choice. You are worried about many things, he says to Martha, but only one thing is needed. And Mary has chosen it. Now that, dear listener, is a sleep-inducing truth if there ever was one. Only one thing is needed. Not 27 things. Not an overflowing to-do list tattooed on your brain. Not a perfect morning routine involving journaling, lemon water, and 10 sun salutations. Just one thing. To be near love. And maybe tonight that's what you're doing. Lying here in the quiet, ears open, heart soft, doing the one thing that actually matters. You're choosing stillness. You're choosing presence. You're choosing Mary's way. And maybe tomorrow, yes, you'll be Martha again. You'll cook, clean, solve, hustle. But tonight is for the feet of peace. You let out a breath you didn't know you were holding. The courtyard fades, and the world goes dim again. Now, you're by a fire. Crackling. Low. Safe. You can almost feel the warmth licking at your cheeks, and across from you, wrapped in a traveler's cloak, eyes reflecting the flames, sits Elijah. Yes, that Elijah. The miracle man. The fire from heaven. Guy the prophet who ran faster than a chariot, but not tonight. Tonight he's broken, spent, done. He's just come from a mountaintop showdown where God sent fire to prove his power. And yet, after all that drama, Elijah finds himself scared, alone, and ready to quit. He lies under a broom tree and whispers the words no one wants to admit. I've had enough. Let me die. But God doesn't scold him. God doesn't say, where's your faith? Instead, he sends an angel with snacks. Get up and eat, the angel says, for the journey is too much for you. No rebuke, no lecture, just divine DoorDash. Elijah eats, sleeps, eats again, and then, only then, he's ready to hear the still, small voice of God. Not in the earthquake, not in the fire, not in the wind, but in the whisper. You think about that, how? Maybe you've been listening for God in all the noise. The headlines, the self-help books, the pressure to manifest your dream life by next Tuesday. But maybe the voice you need most doesn't shout. Maybe it tiptoes in after rest. Maybe it waits for silence, for stillness, for this moment. Your breath slow, your body warm, your heart open. So sleep now, prophet. There is no shame in needing rest. Even the miracle workers got tired. Even the faithful grew weary. Even the saints slept. And tomorrow, well, tomorrow the wilderness will still be there. But tonight is not for wrestling. Tonight is for surrender. So let your worries settle like dust in the firelight. Let your mind drift, feather soft, into the quiet where angels bake bread and prophets nap without guilt. Because sometimes the most spiritual thing you can do is close your eyes and trust that nothing will fall apart while you sleep. It didn't for Elijah. It won't for you. Just rest, dear one. Just rest. The fire fades to embers now. You can feel the heat drift off your skin like steam from a warm bath. Somewhere in the distance, a breeze stirs the trees, the crackle of branches, the hush of wind. You're lying there, still, silent, a little, melted into the mattress, and something in you knows you're not alone in the dark, and you never were, because now we slip into the quiet corners of ancient Rome. Not the Colosseum kind. No lions, no gladiators tonight. Just shadows, candlelight, and the low hum of whispered prayers echoing down stone corridors. You're in a catacomb. But don't worry, it's not spooky. Not the horror movie kind. More like cozy. The air is cool, wrapped in incense and secrets. You hear soft footsteps, a shuffling of fabric, and then you see them, the early Christians, gathered underground. Hiding, yes, but also resting. This is their sanctuary, their pause. Above them, the empire rages on. Nero sharpens his paranoia. The guards march. The people cheer for blood in marble arenas. But down here, in the earth's quiet belly, these believers close their eyes and sing, not loud, not proud, just enough to feel known. You sit among them now, knees tucked under you, listening to a woman read from a worn scroll. Something about love being patient. Something about fear not being the boss anymore, and you think, how did they sleep like this? How did they close their eyes, not knowing if the morning would bring sunlight or soldiers? Here's the secret. They believed in rest stronger than they feared death. Wild, isn't it, that peace could bloom even in persecution, that joy could settle, like dew even when freedom was stripped away. It wasn't denial. They weren't pretending the danger wasn't real. They just believed there was a deeper safety, a truer shelter, something, someone, that no emperor could burn down. You shift a little, letting your shoulders sink deeper into the pillow. The catacomb fades, and in its place, you're lying on a ship. Wood creaks. Water laps gently against the hull, and across from you lies a man with chains on his ankles and peace in his heart. Paul. The apostle. The guy who used to be Saul, the overachieving religious type with control issues and anger management problems. Then, boom, Damascus Road, blinding light, total life reset. Now he's in prison. Again, bound, bruised, and weirdly, fine with it. You look over and he's scribbling a letter by moonlight. Maybe it's to the Philippians. The one where he says, "Don't worry about anything, seriously, just pray. And then let peace, like a guard dog that never sleeps, stand at the door of your heart." You ask him how he's so calm. He shrugs. When you've got nothing, he says, you find out what really holds you. And what held Paul? It wasn't comfort. It wasn't control. It was grace. Even in the middle of shipwrecks, beatings, betrayals, and prisons. Grace. Now, before you go thinking Paul was some kind of superhuman spiritual robot, let's be clear. He had moments. Dark ones. Despaired of life itself. Kind of moments. And yet each time rest found him, not because he figured everything out, but because he stopped trying to. You ever do that? Stop trying to outthink the dark? Stop arguing with the ache? Just exhale. You're doing it now. See? You're becoming, like Paul, a little more okay with not being okay, a little more willing to sleep while the storm rages, the guards pace, the empire threatens, because you know the story doesn't end in chains. Spoiler alert, it ends in light. You hear a rustle, now scrolls being folded, a candle puffing out, and you're swept again to a quieter place, a desert, but not the hot kind. This one's cool. Nighttime. Sky stretched with stars, silent and sacred. And there, walking slowly, staff in hand, is a small, old woman. She's not famous, not yet, but her name is Perpetua, and soon she will become a legend. She's one of the early martyrs, young, brave, way too calm for someone facing lions. But tonight, before any of that, she sleeps. Yes, sleeps. In the cold cell of a Roman prison, with a newborn in her arms, and death looming just beyond the barred window. She sleeps like someone whose soul is untouchable. And that's what makes your breath catch, isn't it? The idea that maybe, just maybe, there's a kind of rest that no one can take from you, not fear, not pain, not even the threat of death. Perpetua's cell is dark, but her heart glows. She dreams of ladders reaching to heaven, of angels, of crowns, of lions made powerless in the light of her courage. And when she wakes, she nurses her baby, hums a lullaby, and whispers a prayer, not for escape, but for strength. You let that settle in you, the kind of strength that doesn't roar, the kind that doesn't post about it, the kind that quietly lays down and says, even here, I will rest. You are back now, on your own bed. No chains, no lions, no underground temple or Roman guard. Just you, your breath, and this blanket of stories woven together like a patchwork quilt. Every thread, a reminder that even in the most chaotic centuries, even under threat and fear and failure, sleep still came. And not just sleep. Sacred rest, sanctified stillness. You roll your head slightly to one side. The pillow catches it. The fan hums. And something in you, something ancient and brave, settles deeper into the night. Because now, you know, you don't have to earn this rest. You don't have to deserve it. It's yours. Because you're held, and maybe, like Paul, you'll scribble something in the dark tomorrow, or like Perpetua, you'll whisper courage into someone else's storm. But for now, you sleep. Like a catacomb saint. Like a desert prophet. Like a child in her mother's arms. Because even the saints slept, and now so do you. The night deepens. You shift slightly, cocooned in warmth, listening as the silence folds in around you like velvet curtains. There's a heaviness in your limbs now, not unpleasant, more like your body sighing in relief. The stories have wrapped around you, and tonight you follow one more thread. It's colder now in this part of the tale. You can feel it before you even see it. The air bites a little. Your breath fogs. There's snow gathering quietly in the creases of a city that doesn't quite sleep. Wittenberg, 1517. You find yourself standing on cobblestone slick with frost. The town is hushed, but not still. Behind shuttered windows, quills scratch paper. Presses groan. And at the center of it all, one man leans over a desk lit by candlelight. Martin Luther. His brow is furrowed. Ink stains his fingers. A mug of something, strong and terrible, steams beside him. He hasn't slept much, but he's not restless. He's wrestling. And tonight, you join him. Not as a theologian, not as a revolutionary, but as someone trying to understand how a man on the edge of excommunication still managed to lie down and close his eyes. You hear it in his muttering. Faith alone, he says, over and over. Not as a slogan, but as a lifeline. And that's when you understand. This isn't a fight against the church. It's a fight against despair. See, Luther had been terrified of God. Not the fuzzy flannel board version. No, he'd grown up with a thunderstorm God, a divine judge keeping score with lightning bolts, and he had tried to be perfect, really tried. He whipped himself, starved himself, confessed everything from pride to blinking too loudly, all in hopes of finding peace. But peace didn't come, until one night, exhausted and fraying, he cracked open Romans and read something that shattered him. The righteous shall live by faith. Not performance, not penance, just faith. You glance over at him now. His face softens as he sets down the quill. The room is quiet. The protest hasn't happened yet. The theses aren't nailed. But something inside him has shifted. He looks up. I'm not afraid anymore, he whispers, because I am not holding myself together. And then, he sleeps, right there at the desk, head resting on parchment, candle flickering, the kind of sleep that follows a soul finally unclenching. You let out a slow breath, because maybe that's what faith is at its simplest. Not knowing all the answers, not winning every argument, just laying down the weight. You close your eyes, and when they open again, the candle is gone. Now you're in a different kind of fire, not from theology this time, but from war. The smell of gunpowder is faint in the wind, but it's there, riding on the cold English air. It's 1940. London, the Blitz. And somehow, even in the middle of blackouts and bomb sirens, people sleep. You blink and find yourself in a tube station, deep underground. The walls curve like the ribs of a whale. Families huddle together in piles of blankets. A man snores softly against a pillar. A child clutches a wooden toy. And just a few feet away, a woman in her 40s, hair curled neatly, lipstick still intact, leans against her suitcase and quietly reads from a worn Bible. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, she murmurs. You look around, trying to make sense of it. How can anyone sleep here? The answer is pinned to the wall above her head. Keep calm and carry on. It's cheesy now, printed on mugs and mouse pads. But back then, it was sacred. Because it wasn't a command to ignore fear. It was a reminder that fear doesn't get the final word. Sleep isn't the luxury of the safe. It's the rebellion of the brave. And during the Blitz, Londoners made sleeping a protest. They lay down in defiance of destruction. They dreamed while sirens screamed. They found peace not because the world was quiet, but because they had decided to be. You feel the rumble of a distant explosion. No one flinches. The little girl rolls over, tucks her toy closer. The woman closes her Bible, leans back and closes her eyes. You follow her example. Let your own eyelids fall. And just before the scene fades, you hear her whisper, "Even here, he is with us." Back in your own bed now, you marvel at that phrase, "even here." It echoes through catacombs and deserts, through towers and prisons, through wars and reformation. Even here, in a London tube station, in a monk's study, in the mind of someone who is still overthinking their to-do list. At midnight, even here, you're not outside the reach of peace. You're not too messy, too late, too loud, too lost. The faith that held saints and seekers, revolutionaries and refugees, holds you too. So you breathe in again. Deep, gentle, grateful. Maybe you've never nailed anything to a door. Maybe you've never read Latin by candlelight or sung hymns during air raids. But you've endured, you've carried on, and now you rest. Not because you've earned it, not because everything is fixed, but because even Luther needed a nap. Even Londoners needed dreams, and even now, even here, peace is closer than fear. Your breathing slows. Your thoughts unravel gently, like yarn falling into a basket. Let them fall. There is nothing you need to hold on to tonight. Faith is holding you. And sleep, as it turns out, is sacred. You're drifting now, not quite dreaming, not quite awake, like someone floating just beneath the surface of still water, aware of the hush above, but content to remain submerged. The air around you is softer, the weight on your shoulders lighter. That's the funny thing about stories rooted in faith. They don't just teach, they cradle you. And tonight they carry you further. This time the world is vast and sun-soaked. The air hums with insects. Dust hangs in golden shafts of light. And you hear it before you see it. A rustling, rhythmic, almost hypnotic. Pages turning, scriptures being copied by hand. You're in a desert monastery. Egypt. Around the year 400. Welcome to the world of the Desert Fathers. Imagine this. Hundreds of people, hermits, monks, seekers, scattered across the barren wilderness, trading, the noise of cities for the silence of sand. Most had left behind wealth, comfort, even family, for a life with no pillow, no roof, and more days than not, no food. Sounds relaxing, right? And yet, they chose it. Because here, in the raw heat and cracked earth, they believed they could hear God more clearly. You're walking with one now, an old monk named Abba Pambo. He's got that peaceful, unbothered face that only people who haven't checked their email in 30 years can manage. His tunic is simple, his sandals are nearly dust, and he hasn't spoken in hours. Finally, you ask him, "Aren't you ever afraid? Of storms, of robbers, of being alone?" He just smiles and says, "Even a lion sleeps." You blink. That's not what you expected, but maybe that's the point. See, the Desert Fathers believed something we forget all the time. You don't need to understand everything to rest. You don't need to fix everything first. You don't even need a feather mattress, you just need stillness. They didn't sleep because they were lazy. They slept because they had laid down everything else, ego, noise, control, and found, to their surprise, that rest was waiting underneath. And here's the odd little detail nobody tells you. Some of these monks slept like rocks, literally. One of them, Abba Macarius, used to rest his head on a stone, not to punish himself, but because it reminded him that comfort wasn't the source of peace. That's not to say they didn't struggle. Oh, they absolutely did. There are stories of monks fighting hallucinations, battling their inner demons, sleepwalking into caves, or waking up convinced the devil himself was gnawing on their toes. Sleep in the desert was spiritual warfare. But it was also a sacred gift. You hear the wind whistle through cracked clay walls. The stars above you blaze unbothered and bright. And somewhere in the dark, a voice prays, "Lord, you have been our dwelling place throughout all generations." You close your eyes, and when you open them again, you're thousands of miles north. The world is green now, damp, covered in ivy and stone. You're in Ireland, the early Middle Ages, the land of saints and scholars. Christian monasteries here are the heartbeat of civilization. While the Roman Empire collapses in the south, monks in this chilly little island are quietly saving the world one illuminated manuscript at a time. You duck into one of these scriptoriums. Don't worry, the monks barely notice you. They're hunched over their work, painting gold leaf into the margins of psalms. It smells like ink and wool and maybe a little sheep, and somewhere nearby, a bell rings. It's time for Compline, the last prayers of the day. You follow the procession. They walk slowly, calmly. No rush. No panic. Just the soft shuffle of sandals and the quiet murmur of words that have been spoken for centuries. You sit at the back of the chapel. The chant begins. "Into your hands, O Lord, I commend my spirit." Your eyelids are heavier than before. These aren't just prayers, they're lullabies. Not just sacred duties, but signals to the body. The day is done. The burdens can wait. You are not alone. And this is the part no one puts in textbooks. Medieval monks slept in shifts. They'd rise at midnight for vigils, then sleep again. And even with broken rest, they lived long, peaceful lives. Not because they had memory foam mattresses, they didn't, but because their sleep was steeped in meaning. They didn't treat sleep like a timeout from holiness. They treated it as, holy, you shift slightly. Your own bed suddenly feels like a kind of monastery. The fan hums like a chant. Your breathing becomes the rhythm. Even now you feel the thread pulling tighter. All these centuries of souls, desert hermits, Irish scribes, Egyptian mystics, surrendering their weariness into the same hands. And you're part of it. Because somewhere in your own story, you've had those nights too. The ones where sleep didn't come easy, where your mind spun like laundry on high heat, and peace seemed more myth than medicine. But tonight, you let go of the idea that you need to earn rest. Because here's the truth whispered across millennia. Sleep is not a weakness. It's a trust fall. You're not being unproductive. You're being human. You're not escaping the world. You're admitting you can't carry it all. Even Christ himself, yes, him, fell asleep on a boat in the middle of a storm. You think the apostles weren't horrified? "Master, don't you care that we're perishing?" And what did he do? He yawned, calmed the sea, and probably went right back to sleep. Because peace doesn't always mean quiet circumstances. Sometimes it means knowing who's in the boat with you. You're back in your own room now. The edges of the story begin to blur. Your body, once tense, is slowly becoming the ground it lies on. Heavy, supported, still. Outside, maybe the world keeps spinning. Maybe the storms rage. Maybe the inbox fills. Maybe the to-do list grows another head like some mythical hydra, but inside, the monks are chanting. The desert is quiet. The candle is flickering low. And you, dear friend, are allowed to rest. You are not abandoned. You are not forgotten. You are part of the great sleeping faithful, those who believed enough to close their eyes. So go ahead. Turn your face into the pillow. Pull the blankets up. Let every muscle say, "I'm done for now," and let faith do the rest. The air around you is barely moving now. So quiet it almost feels like silence is breathing with you. You've wandered through deserts and monasteries, through prayers and storm-tossed boats, and with every step, you've noticed something. Rest isn't always about the body. It's about permission. Permission to stop, to soften, to believe that someone else is holding the world. But tonight, we go where rest is nearly impossible. You're stepping into the mud, the smoke, the blood-spattered fog of a battlefield. France, 1916, World War I. It's a nightmare of noise. Shells scream overhead. The earth shakes, and the air smells like damp earth and metal. You're not sure what direction you're facing anymore. Time feels bent, folded, like it's no longer interested in moving forward. But in this chaos, tucked inside a trench with walls made of despair and wet sandbags, someone is writing a letter. He's a young British soldier. Thin, pale, eyes too old for his face. You catch a glimpse of the envelope. It's addressed to his mother. He's telling her not about battle, no, that would be too cruel, but about the stars he saw the night before. How clear they were. How, for a few moments, even in this godless pit, he felt held. He ends the letter like this. I said a prayer before I fell asleep. I'm not sure to whom, but it helped. Even in the horror of war, sleep finds a crack to slip through. You duck into a nearby dugout. Inside, a chaplain is sitting quietly. His name is Jeffrey. He's not armed, but he carries something just as weighty. A small Bible and a notebook filled with the names of the dying. His job is strange and sacred, to remind soldiers they're not alone, to hold their hands, murmur a psalm, maybe whisper the Lord's Prayer as the darkness closes. He's seen men cry, scream, laugh deliriously. But the thing he says he never forgets, the ones who ask, can I rest now? Not, am I forgiven? Not, will I be remembered? Just, can I rest? And his answer, always, gently, is yes. Because even here, where sleep is fragile, where faith is sometimes just a flicker in a shell crater, there is a kind of holy surrender in rest. Now here's a little-known truth. Many soldiers, knowing they might not wake again, would wrap their rosaries around their hands or tuck scraps of scripture inside their shirts. They'd sleep in shifts, their heads resting on boots or rifles, and in their final moments more than a few were said to have whispered lines from Psalm 23. He makes me lie down in green pastures. Funny, isn't it? Even in the filth of war, the image that brings peace is not vengeance or victory, but a quiet field, a shepherd, rest, and the historians? Oh, they still argue about everything. Some say the chaplains romanticized things. Others say faith was just a coping mechanism. But those letters, those journal entries, they tell another story. One where the soul, even drenched in fear, still longs to sleep like a child in its father's arms. Now the scene shifts again. The war fades, the trench melts away, and you find yourself somewhere very different. It's bright now, clean. The air smells like disinfectant. A soft beeping echoes every few seconds. You're in a hospital room, modern day. The person in the bed is older, maybe 80, worn hands, faint pulse. The doctor has already said the words. The nurses have done their rounds. And the family, well, they've said their goodbyes, but something sacred lingers, because there in the chair beside the bed is a pastor, or maybe a daughter, or a friend. Doesn't matter. What matters is the whisper on their lips. You can rest now. You don't have to fight anymore. It's the same prayer said in trenches, in monasteries, in bedrooms around the world. It's a prayer of faith, of release, of returning. Because at the edge of life, there is no more to-do list, no more fear of missing out, no more should-haves or what-ifs. There is only surrender. And that surrender? It's not defeat. It's trust. Just like a baby curling into sleep because the parent is near. Just like Christ on the cross whispering, "Into your hands I commit my spirit," before the sky turned dark. You realize with a small breath that the most faithful thing you might ever do isn't preaching or fasting or even singing hymns. It might just be laying down, letting go, closing your eyes, not because you're sure of everything, but because you're sure of someone. Outside, the hospital lights blink like quiet stars. Somewhere a machine hums. And inside, the soul slips peacefully out, as gentle as mist rising from a field. And here's the strange grace. For those left behind, sleep becomes a form of mourning and a form of healing. Ever notice how the first thing people say after loss is, I just want to sleep? Because sleep is where your soul starts to stitch itself back together. And maybe that's why the Psalms, more than any other part of Scripture, talk about sleep like a gift, not a weakness. In peace, I will lie down and sleep, for you alone. O Lord, make me dwell in safety, not in comfort, not in certainty, but in safety. You turn your head slightly on the pillow now. You're still here, still breathing, still held, and you realize this story we've been telling together, it isn't about people who had perfect faith or uninterrupted sleep. It's about people who were willing to try, to lie down in trenches and cathedrals and cottages and deserts, to whisper, "Even now I trust." And maybe tonight, that's you too. You don't need to pray fancy. You don't need to memorize scripture. You don't even need to believe perfectly. You just need to rest. Let the world turn without you for a while. Let your soul untangle in the quiet. Let the saints who have gone before you, soldiers and scribes and shepherds and saints, sing you softly toward sleep. Because if they could find peace in war, in death, in chaos, you, in your warm bed, beneath the low hum of a quiet room, you'll be just fine, even when the heart hurts, even when the answers don't come, even when you're afraid. You can rest. You are allowed to rest. The world will be okay without you tonight. Close your eyes. Let your breath slow. The saints are sleeping. And so can you. You've traveled far now, haven't you? From ancient deserts to battlefield trenches, from dark monasteries to hospital rooms, where whispers said more than sermons ever could. And yet, here you are, breathing slowly, eyes a little heavier than before. The journey was never about the noise outside, but the stillness forming inside you. Now, for one last stretch, you're walking through the soft hush of a forest, not the wild, tangled kind, but the gentle woods that seem to exhale. With you, moss cushions your steps. The trees hum in a voice older than language. You can hear your own heartbeat soft and steady like a drum you didn't know you carried. And through the branches, you spot a cottage, a little crooked. Wooden shutters, smoke curling from the chimney like it's waving hello. Inside, a candle flickers on a table next to a half-read Bible and a teacup with steam still rising. The scent of lavender and bread lingers in the air like a lullaby. And there, settled into a creaky armchair by the fire, is someone you've been waiting to meet. She's old, wrinkled, wrapped in a shawl thick with time. Maybe she's a nun. Maybe just a grandmother who prayed more than she gossiped. Doesn't matter. What matters is the look in her eyes. She sees you and smiles. Come to me, all who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. She says it not like a command, but like a promise already fulfilled. You sit across from her. The fire crackles. She begins telling stories, not with words, but with presence. You feel them in the rhythm of her breath, in the way she closes her eyes between sips of tea. One story stands out, about a man, centuries ago, who was imprisoned for his beliefs. Cold stone walls, no mattress, just scripture scratched into the walls with a broken spoon. And every night as the rats scurried and the guards mocked him, he whispered one thing: "Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil." He wasn't expecting freedom, or justice, or even a good night's sleep, just presence, just peace, and somehow he found it. You shift in your seat, now warm all the way to your toes, and the old woman leans closer. "You know," she says, "even Jesus slept in a storm." You blink. It's true. That strange little detail from the Gospels. The disciples are panicking, the boat's being tossed, waves crashing, and there he is, asleep, on a cushion. Like, the whole thing was a lullaby, and they shouted, "Don't you care that we're drowning?" But Jesus? He woke up, calmed the storm, and then asked the one question we all avoid. Why were you afraid? Maybe faith isn't about silence. Maybe it's about sleeping in the storm and knowing the boat is still afloat. Even now, with your own mind sometimes crashing louder than any sea. Now, here's the weird, wonderful fact for tonight. Medieval monks used to sleep in 2 shifts. Yes, 2 sleeps. One after Vespers, a midnight waking for prayer, and another stretch till sunrise. They believed night was sacred, and that the waking hours weren't interruptions, but invitations. Maybe your rest isn't broken. Maybe it's holy. Maybe those 3 a.m. wake-ups aren't signs of anxiety, but sacred appointments with the divine. Sleep as a spiritual rhythm, not a medical checklist. And so, you come back to your breath. In, out. No pressure, no performance, no productivity. Just presence. Like those old monks, like that imprisoned man, like Jesus on the boat. Sleep is the sacred yes you whisper when your body can't anymore. You hear the fire dim. The old woman has nodded off now, hands folded gently. The teacup cools beside her. She looks peaceful. And you're ready, because through every part of this journey, from saints in caves to soldiers in mud to your own quiet bed, one thread has held it all together. You are safe enough to rest, not because the world is perfect, not because you've figured it all out, but because you are not alone. The saints have slept, the Savior has slept, you can too. So before you drift off completely, let me leave you with this soft farewell, a kind of prayer, a kind of lullaby. Let it wrap around you like the coziest blanket you've ever known. Tonight, may your thoughts slow like leaves falling into a quiet stream. May the worries of tomorrow melt like wax under the flame of trust. May your body soften into the bed as if it remembers the shape of peace. May every breath you take remind you, you're allowed to be unproductive. You're allowed to rest without guilt. You're allowed to simply be. You don't have to earn sleep. You just have to welcome it, so dim the lights in your heart. Turn down the noise of perfection. Let your spirit slip quietly into the arms of the one who never slumbers, so you don't have to stay awake anymore. Let go. You're held. You're safe. You are enough, even asleep. Thank you so much for sharing this journey with me tonight. If you've enjoyed this gentle walk through faith and rest, please do let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is where you are. And hey, if you're still awake, take a second to like the video and subscribe, not just because it helps me out, but because it tells me you're finding peace here. And that means everything to me. Now hush. Let the breath of heaven rock you. Let the saints keep watch. Let the silence grow wings. Close your eyes. Sleep in faith, sleep in peace, sleep in love. End of script. Sweet dreams.